All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another live stream. It is Friday night, it is 7 p.m., and we are live dual streaming on both my channel and the USS Kidd Veterans Museum channel. Tim is here, of course, with us, and we have a new guest with us this week. Matt is with the Battleship USS Alabama at Battleship Memorial Park in Mobile, Alabama. Um, Matt, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, about how you came to the museum and what is your role there.
So I actually came to the museum as a volunteer in 2015. I didn't know anything about the ship at that time, and a buddy I was working with at the time was telling me about the ship and the museum, and he said, "Man, that would be a dream job." And so I said, "Well, have you ever thought of volunteering?" And that got him on a path to start volunteering, and that eventually brought me in. And we volunteered for about a year and a half, maybe a little longer. Then we were hired, both of us, as museum technicians. So we were doing a lot of restoration work. And slowly I worked up to then becoming the volunteer coordinator. And now I am the curator for operations. So I kind of make sure the department runs and help decide, placement on things like where the aircraft go or what exhibits we're looking forward to, and then carrying out, making sure those exhibits happen.
Okay. So is it kind of like a curator type role?
Yes, I'm sorry. So I'm the associate curator for
Okay,
operations. So it's very much in that curation department.
gotcha. So, Tim, what's happening at USS Kidd Veterans Museum? What's been going on with the museum and the ship?
Well, it was a pretty slow day today. We had a couple of ne'er-do-wells that came in and just soaked up all my time.
I heard about that.
Kept me
Yeah.
from having lunch, but even though I directed them to a really good place, but those people shall remain unnamed, Matt, Dominique, and James Fungi.
No idea who you're talking about.
I have no idea. But anyway, no, things are going well. I was down at the shipyard yesterday, and they're busy little beavers. If you saw our social media post where I terrorized our viewers with some Gen Z slang, Gen Z speak about the sea chest. Well, the sea chests are already sealed up. It's one long, smooth surface along the skin of the ship now. And they're welding around the rivets and all the overlap plates, sealing that up. They're probably about anywhere from 50% to 2/3 of the way done with that, and just chugging away. So we're in the home stretch.
Yep, it's winding down. Have you taken Matt here to the dry dock to see Kidd?
Matt has not managed to come over yet. And Matt, I'm going to tell you right now, Evan from the COD is coming down in 2 weeks. So if you want to have a good nerdy time, come over in 2 weeks and we'll talk. And
he told me because he's going to hit us too.
He's hitting you too? I think he's going to you first and then coming this way. So maybe you can stow away in his car.
That's a good idea.
I think I might be able to make something happen.
There you go. Come nerd out with the rest of us.
So, pulling back the curtain a little bit, we've all been communicating and coordinating behind the scenes to get Matt here on the stream with us. Tim, you guys have a friendship that. How did you guys meet and become friends? I love hearing about the collaborations between the museum ships, and I understand again you guys are pretty good friends. So tell us about that a little bit.
How did we meet? I just don't remember. It's like you've always been at Bama.
Well, the first time I met you, you had come to the ship, and you were I just met you briefly by Mount 8, 5-inch mount, and then I actually got to sit down and talk to you when we were at Hensa in Corpus Christi in 2016, and so we kind of got to sit and talk.
We've known each other 9 years. Holy crap. Okay.
At least.
I'm trying to remember what I was doing on Bama around that time. Was that when we brought over the exhibit from the Australian National Maritime Museum about the Guardians of Sunder
Yes.
Strait?
The Perth and the Houston.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's where Shay introduced us. Okay. All right.
Right.
Like I said, it just
Right.
seems like you've always been there.
Sounds
It's,
like you.
it's been 10 years now.
With
So.
So I was saying it sounds like you with Kidd.
Oh God. Let's not even talk about that.
So we got a pretty unique topic here tonight. Tim, we kind of touched on some of this stuff a few weeks ago, which is like, well, why don't we really dive deep into this topic? And Matt can offer some unique insight to this as well, because Alabama being right there in Mobile, we all live in a hurricane-prone area, as are the respective museum ships we're going to be talking about. So, Tim, you were gracious enough to prepare a little slideshow for us, and I'm going to go ahead and bring that up, and we can get underway here.
Okay.
So,
and I think it's worth noting that we're doing the stream on the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. So.
And Hurricane Ida.
And Hurricane Ida as well? Okay. Not the 20th, but what was that, 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah, not the 20th, but that hit in 2021.
21. That far back.
Yeah.
Man, time flies. Time flies when your ship leaks.
Right. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Okay.
And Tim, if you will lead us off here on this discussion.
Okay. Well, for the viewers that were with us 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago, however long it was, we were talking about ship collisions and allisions. So these first few pictures will be pretty familiar. Right off the bat, USS Orlick, when she was in Orange, Texas, right after coming home from Turkey. She got set up over there and was operating, and then along comes Rita as a Category 3 and slammed her around a little bit, and you can see she ran into a crane barge there, and she gashed her bow, even though her stern is up against the crane barge right in this picture. And they had to take Orlick away from her berthing, take her to a shipyard, get her fixed up. And then while she was away, this is one of the hazards that museum ships face sometimes. While she was away, the city and the person who had kind of leased out the land came to an agreement, and they decided they were going to do a different development than what was originally envisioned there. And so Orlick had to go bye-bye. So she got that sudden disruption of business, that damage to the ship, and they're trying to get back on their feet, and all of a sudden now you don't have a home to go home to. So they ended up coming to Lake Charles. That was in 2005 with Rita. And then let me do my math.
Coincidentally, Rita also
15 years later.
Lake Charles.
Yeah, 15 years later, she's in Lake Charles for this next slide when Hurricane Laura rolls through. And Category 4, she was in they call it a backwater of the Calcasieu River. What it is, it's almost like the formation of an oxbow lake. The river changed course at some point, and it created this sharper turn where the riverbed lies now. So this wider turn just kind of became kind of an estuary, deep enough to bring ships and barges and everything into, but not a lot of current. And somewhere at some point in time, somebody took and created a berm, a dike across the northern end. So now it's just fairly still water. And so they were berthed back there, and Laura came in with the storm surge and the winds and broke a whole bunch of vessels loose, and pushed them north into the sharp curve part where it was headed back toward the river where that dike is. And she ended up slamming up against this barge. And in this photo, you can see she's kind of resting on one of those forward prongs, that port side prong for that barge. And she got some damage on her starboard superstructure, banging around with all the vessels. If we had the photo where you draw out a little bit, because these are satellite photos, you'd see a whole nest of ships just washed up against this bank. And she banged up her starboard side superstructure back between the stacks and the helipad, and gashed her upper bow real good. Something about her bow, she always gets a bloody nose. And the boat davit just about got ripped entirely off, the aft boat davit. So Orlick has had some hard luck since she's come home to the U.S. and hopefully Jacksonville does better for her in the long term, and she has a little bit better luck there.
It's also worth mentioning, going back to Rita for a second. Rita hit maybe a month or so, the most, after Katrina hit the opposite side of the state. 2005 was just a horrific hurricane season. Rita was a Category 5 at one point in the Gulf as well. Luckily, she weakened down to a 3 before she made landfall and spared, these people from more devastation that would have happened there. But then you get Laura here, which was even worse a couple of years ago. And you see in the result, again, like you say with Orlick, that poor ship has just had some bad luck.
Yeah. Thank you, American Loyalist. We appreciate the support.
Absolutely. SS Oriana. I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not either. Matt, you know anything about her?
I don't actually.
Okay. Loyalist, can you give us a little more info on Oriana? None of us are familiar with her. We'd like to learn more.
Yeah, for sure. So are we ready to move on to the next one, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So this was another one that we covered incorrectly on that collision stream. We said Hurricane Hugo, but it was Hurricane Juan. Dickie from Greyhound.
Oh wow! Okay.
In reality, is HMCS Sackville up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and she during Hurricane Juan, her crew, anticipating problems, they went ahead and did some extra lashing down with her mooring lines, added a few lines, and even so, the winds and the currents from the storm surge got heavy enough that she broke loose and drifted across the way and slammed into the tall ship Lorinda, which I think you've got a picture of her coming up. Yeah, yep. There's Lorinda. I managed to find that picture I couldn't get before. Lorinda is not a true tall ship in like from the 1800s. Her creator, her builder, dreamed of having a tall ship from boyhood and built one from scratch based off of some plans from some older ships, but then he adapted it with this junk rig. And I'm not saying junk rig like it's a piece of junk as in an Asian type sail setup for the old Chinese junks, which she looks gorgeous right there. I love that.
Definitely.
She's a pretty ship, but on the next slide, you'll see what became of her when Sackville slammed into her. Whoop, there we go. That's Sackville on the far right of the picture, and that's Lorinda with her mast sticking out of the water. They eventually raised her. Sackville didn't get much damage aside from some of that scraping you see on the bow there. And they raised Lorinda, and unfortunately the cost of repairing her was beyond the owner's means, and he ended up selling her to another group, and that group got her fixed up and back in business. And so she's still around, and she's right down the way from Sackville. It ended up in a lawsuit, and the judge ultimately found that the crew of the Sackville had done due diligence, everything they could have, that this was simply an act of God. which is sad for the owner of the original owner of the Lorinda. But you know, sometimes you just can't help stuff. So both ships are still around, fortunately, and doing well. So as far as I know, and I want to give a shout out to Mr. Savin Torsk, who allowed us to use this photo. I contacted him and asked him permission, and he graciously provided it, and sent him the link to the last stream. And he came back after watching it, and he said, "Here's my whole playlist of photographs and whatever you need out of the album, just grab." So thank you very much. Yes.
Very much appreciate that. It's so strange to me to see that, you know, a hurricane hitting that far up north and causing this type of devastation.
I think in 2020 there was one point to where there was a satellite image of a storm that was, because 2020, just like 2005, was a very active season, and at the same time you had a storm hitting, I want to say Texas, western Louisiana, eastern Texas. You had one hitting Halifax, or just shy of hitting Halifax, and on the satellite image, the arms were sweeping down. These were two big storms sweeping down, and the northern storm's arm connected with the southern storm's arm, and they were linked at that point. And I made the joke on Twitter, wait, they're connecting now, like Voltron? Somebody get me Battleship Yamato, Space Battleship Yamato. We need to talk.
Right.
And that thing almost went viral. People just latched on to Voltron and Space Battleship Yamato.
Well, he is the defender of the universe,
I guess. Yeah.
All right. Next one.
Yeah. In
Okay.
fact, American Loyalist is bringing up one of our next ones coming up.
Yep. Here we go.
Hurricane Hugo. And Hurricane Hugo came ashore around Patriots Point in 1989 as a Category 4. And this is Yorktown as she looks in the best of times. And then in the next slide, again, she's looking good, but we've got a vantage point of her walkway and how she's berthed from the port side. I think that's no, the starboard side. Sorry.
See, I'm not seeing Laffy.
Laffy is just out of frame of this photograph.
Okay.
To the left of the photograph.
Gotcha.
And so on the next one, I got some stats that I can read off. You see how that walkway is out of kilter?
Correct.
Hugo hit with about 130 mile per hour winds. Yorktown, according to what I read on Patriot Point's Facebook page, is sunk down 25 feet in the mud. And with the storm surge that came in, it lifted Yorktown's stern 4 to 5 feet upward and moved her laterally 6 inches, which is what you're seeing there. The 6 inches on the ship results in that big of a gap in the walkway. It broke her main water and sewer lines and forced water with the wave action into parts of the carrier that had previously been dry. And to this day, her stern still sits slightly kiltered upward in relation to her bow. And she has a very, very slight list to starboard. And I think I've got the next slide is her mast.
Real quick, Matt, how far down is Alabama on, in the mud?
It varies because of the topography of the bottom, anywhere from 10 to 20 feet roughly.
Okay. Because we are definitely going to be covering Alabama, because Alabama was in Katrina, so that's definitely coming up.
And somebody asked if it was just from wind. No, this is not just wind; it's also storm surge being pushed up the Charleston River.
Yeah.
So, the other thing that I was going to bring up about Yorktown, if you're looking at the mast here, This is one of the photographs they showed. The mast, from the force of the wind, actually twisted, torqued slightly around. So the mast is not perfectly aligned like it used to be after Hugo.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I remember hearing, I know of Hurricane Hugo, but I was very young when this thing hit, so I really didn't know much about what happened, but I do remember hearing about this storm.
There is a ship, one of the old, not Liberty ships or Victory ships, but one of the old AKAs or APAs. I forget which one, but it's named after a feature of Louisiana, Crescent City or Vermilion or something. I think it's Vermilion, that they sank as a reef off of Myrtle Beach, and the storm surge picked this thing up and underwater shoved it 18 miles underwater and then dropped it back down again. So
Wow.
yeah, massive storm surge. I can't imagine moving a ship underwater, because think of all that friction. It's pushing the water, pushing it through the water and pushing that water out of the way to make it go forward. So that's some tremendous force.
No kidding. Shows you the power of storm surge.
Yes. So in addition to what it did to Yorktown, it messed around a little bit with some of its aircraft. And this was a great photo. That's that seahorse. Used to be located directly in front of the bridge on the carrier, and you can see the inset where it broke the straps that they had it strapped down with, and it just wobbled its way down the deck. And they said in the post where I got the pictures from that it would have gone overboard, over the bow of the ship, if it hadn't got stuck in a gutter. So one of the wheels caught in a gutter and it got jammed up and didn't keep going.
As you were first describing this, that's my first thought is, how did this thing not go
I know,
off
right?
the deck? That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how much those. Matt, do you deal with aircraft more than I do? How much would one of those seahorses weigh?
I wouldn't real sure off the top of my head. It's going to be probably closer to about 9,000 or 10,000 pounds, I think.
Wow. Yeah. Throwing some tonnage around. Thank you, loyalist. We appreciate that. That's twice in a row, man.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what the answer to that question is, Loyalist. I'm not going to lie to you.
How should the Big U fare? Because the Essex class carrier in the same area is fine.
I'm not sure.
Oh, are you talking about the Oriskany?
Yeah. Since you mentioned that, Tim, that's probably what he's referring to. But I mean, once a ship of that size is reefed, I don't think they're not going to move.
Not easily, at least.
No, for sure.
Yeah. When reefed underwater, yes. Yeah, I would say it's going to have to be a very, very big storm surge to pick the United States up after she's reefed and move her. But as we've seen, anything is possible.
Indeed.
So let's see. Yeah, we got some more aircraft photos of damage to aircraft for Yorktown. One of them got its nose bloodied a little bit. Another got its wing damaged. There on the top.
That's something we're going to be talking about a lot when we get to Alabama, because they have a big aircraft pavilion there. You guys, I mean, do you know the exact count? How many aircraft you have there, Matt, or best guess?
Right now, we're pushing 30. I think it's 28 aircraft.
Oh, wow.
When we were at Midway last year, I think we have as many aircraft as Midway does.
Oh, wow. And I've been to Midway. They've got quite a few. So what are we looking at here, Tim?
I don't know these aircraft that well. I can't get a good scope on This one, the bottom one, almost looks like a Corsair because it's got that big scoop on the bottom, but the cockpit to me just doesn't look right for a Corsair. So I'm not sure what that is.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
that's an
I'm-
F8 Crusader, which is what the Corsair is based off of.
Okay. That's the similarity. Okay. And I don't think there's enough in the photo with the wing to be able to tell. But I do see one of my favorite aircraft in the background of that picture with the little UFO sitting on the top, one of the AWACS planes. Love those things.
Is that an E2
Because
back
they look
there?
so weird. Let's see. Not a Corsair. Yep. Hello, Aaron.
There's Laffy.
Yeah, Laffy and Clamagore apparently broke their moorings and were drifting off, and they didn't break all of them. So fortunately, something kept them hanging around. But in this situation here, it looks like they've tied them off to each other, and they're using a little boat to try to get them back into place.
Now,
Or
this
maybe-
sub is no longer there, though, correct?
What's that?
This sub is no longer there, though, correct?
Clamagore, I forget which year, Matt, maybe you know. Clamagore in recent history, they went ahead and I believe they scrapped her in place. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's been in the last 5 years. It's been pretty recent.
Yeah, I think it was post-COVID or during COVID, maybe. So yeah, apparently not much damage happened to either of them from this little swing around, but yeah, but for the grace of God, they could have got both of them slamming around and lost them or damaged them.
Well, they couldn't sink Laffy in the war, and Hugo couldn't sink her either.
You know, one of the articles, because some AI was popping up and pointing me in some directions and everything, and one of the articles that I followed up with to make sure that it was reporting accurately, because as we said in the last stream that we did about collisions, AI is not that sharp in some areas, because it said that Kidd suffered a collision while in dry dock. And it's like, nope. So I follow up on all the little links that it gives me. And one of the articles about this actually pretty much verbatim said what you just said, that the Japanese couldn't sink her with 8 bomb hits and 4 kamikazes, and Hugo gave it its best shot and still didn't damage her. So surprisingly, I knew about Savannah being there, but and Ingham, but I found another ship that used to be at Patriots Point that I had never heard of. So
Wait, so the Ingham that is currently in Key West was once here?
yes, Key West at one point had Mohawk, and Ingham had just come back from a dry docking, and Patriots Point, from what I heard through the grapevine, basically was looking to downsize some more, and so they were going to try to find a home for Ingham, and that way the Coast Guard wouldn't, deep six her. And so they worked out a trade to where the Coast Guard took Mohawk back, and Ingham went south to Key West and is living there now, and Mohawk was reefed. So
Wow.
Mohawk apparently needed a lot more work, and Ingham had just come out of the dry dock. So, it made sense. In fact, you can see the Savannah right past the carrier's superstructure right there.
Yeah.
The white bow sticking out.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't notice that till you pointed it out.
All right, what we got on the next one? I think we should have a 3D.
There's Ingham.
There you go. So in the background, you've got Savannah. In the middle, you've got Ingham, and then USCGC Comanche was there in the 80s, which I had never read anything about her being there. She eventually left and was reefed. And this is where I get confused a little bit, because Matt, I think, did you go to symposium in Bremerton a few years back?
I wasn't there.
You wasn't there. Okay. There's a Coast Guard cutter Comanche there, and they call everything a cutter. She's a tug. So apparently she inherited the name Comanche after this one was reefed. So that got me really confused because I'm like, this looks nothing like what I sailed on. So, Comanche broke her moorings and banged against her pier pretty hard. And another source also said she banged against the side of Yorktown, but that one's not as reliable a source as the one that said banging against the pier. And Comanche suffered $250,000 in damage in 1989 dollars. And so they went ahead and let her go shortly thereafter. She was reefed in 92. The U.S. Naval Institute magazine reported that Ingham, quote, looked like she had been sandblasted, so fierce were the winds. Savannah broke some moorings and damaged her gangway. But on the next slide, you'll see what happened most to her, which was her drainage system, deck drains and everything were so overwhelmed that water began pooling and revealing previously unknown leaks that ended up getting inside and damaging some of her spaces. So this picture on the right was apparently taken after she left Patriots Point and where she's at in Baltimore now, as they're trying to fix her up and find her a permanent home as a museum.
So where exactly in Baltimore is she right now?
I don't know an exact location because I know at one point they had to move her. Or no, they moved John Brown. Never mind. I'm not sure where exactly she is in Baltimore.
Okay.
She's
not. Go ahead.
She's still under the control of MARAD, and MARAD will open her up once or twice a year, I think, for touring for a weekend, and then shuts it down again.
Because that was going to be my question. Was she open to the public?
Periodically.
Gotcha.
Periodically, and she's still not quite a museum yet, but they're working hard to try to find a way to get her out there for somebody.
Good deal.
And so that takes care of Mr. Hugo.
This one I'm a bit more familiar with here.
Yeah, Stewart.
And Hurricane Ike. I remember this storm because for a while, if I remember correctly, we thought it was going to hit Louisiana, but it kept veering more and more and more to the west. It hit Galveston head on, and here we're looking at the USS Stewart from the Galveston Naval Museum.
Yeah, and the storm surge was so bad that it picked her and Kavala up. And unfortunately, I never can find any pictures of Kavala from that vantage point. I remember one from back in 2008 kind of looking overhead like a drone shot. And you could tell Kavala was out of her dry berth. It basically picked her up and slid her straight back, whereas Stewart picked up and twisted slightly to starboard and then landed on top of that sailboat that we talked about last time. A little sailboat had sunk and was being pushed by the storm surge and ended up underneath her. So Stewart is you can find pictures of this much easier than you do Kavala. Kavala, looking at a distance, looks like she's straight up and down. She's not listing.
Right.
She slid backwards out of the berth. Her tail, she's probably like Yorktown. She's probably up by the tail just a little bit, by the stern, and but she's still sitting dead on with that track in the dry berth. As far as damage to the ships themselves, I never read too much about damage. I'm sure they probably took a little bit, but I think I saw something on their Facebook page where they had lost some equipment and FEMA had cut a check to help them, find replacements for it. And so they had put out a call and, something like Polaris and a Binnacle, that sort of stuff.
But
Try to
you,
replace.
you guys, you and Matt would know better than me, of course. It seems like there would have been some type of hull damage, at least on that starboard side. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I've never messed with a ship that's been dry berthed, so I don't know if it was just soft soil around her and it just lifted her up and then she set down catawamper. I don't know if it damaged any framing. I've never really heard. That might be you might want to contact Galveston at some point and see if they'll come on for a live stream and talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be a good one.
Yeah. If you're out there, we would love to talk to you.
See if you can get Brian on board.
Okay.
Get him out here for November 30th for the end of hurricane season.
Yeah, for sure.
How did they fix this? From what I remember hearing, they basically just dug out from under them and let them settle back into an even keel and then filled in around them again.
Now, I have been to Galveston recently as in earlier this year, and this looks a bit different now. They have essentially like a rock barrier here on the shore right here.
To prevent erosion?
I would think so. That's what I'm guessing it's for. So let's see. What do we have next?
Yeah, Intrepid. Wait, did we go back one?
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay. All right. I was expecting somebody else. Okay, so
sorry.
Intrepid, Hurricane Sandy. I was teasing the heck out of my friends in New York. None of them were with the Intrepid, but I was teasing them when Sandy came ashore because they were calling it Superstorm Sandy, and
I remember that.
Rudy Giuliani got on the television and was like, "Oh my God, run for your lives!" He was panicking. I was like, "Come on, dude! It's a Cat 1 as it's coming towards you. Really?" People in Louisiana are looking at Cat 1s and going, "We need a few more kegs," But according to this, when Sandy hit New York City, she was not even a Category 1. She was what the meteorologists termed a post-tropical storm. So she had gone up, attained hurricane status, and then come back down in intensity, and yet somehow still had Category 1 winds, but some of the other factors that make it a hurricane, she had fallen below the threshold, so they couldn't call her a hurricane anymore. But she did have Category 1 winds. Again, you got storm surge here. The storm surge flooded Intrepid's pier with 6 feet of water. Did significant damage to their welcome center there on the pier. The temporary inflatable shelter, I didn't realize the thing was inflatable, but the inflatable shelter, the dome for the Space Shuttle Enterprise, was damaged when the electrical facility on the pier shorted out and they lost power on the ship, and the shelter basically just deflated around the shuttle and exposed, now it's tearing and exposes it to winds, and a chunk of the shuttle's tail was torn away. I did not hear too much about damage to the ship in any of the sources that I was looking at. Didn't hear anything about damage to aircraft, mainly just to the pier and to the shuttle. So, and I didn't find anything about Growler because, of course, Growler is berthed right next to her. So apparently that was the major thing, was the storm surge coming in and shorting things out and making it difficult.
Next one.
Yeah, let's see what we got. Yeah, there's the shuttle. And you can see it looks like the chunk is missing near the top of the shuttle's tail there.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. And I never knew that there was actually a shuttle on this ship. Is that still there?
Yeah, she's still there. I think they moved the Concorde, which you see to the right, off of the carrier, and it's sitting pier side now. But yeah, they've built a more permanent structure, a hard structure around the shuttle now, to keep it indoors and to protect it.
Okay.
NASA supposedly in one of the articles called this inflatable shelter. This would withstand the winds of a quote 100-year storm, and apparently they got 100-year storm force winds with just a few years after they got the shuttle.
So, Matt's asking this question in chat. And I'm wondering the same thing. How does a space shuttle end up on a Navy museum ship? How did that work out?
That's a good question, and that's something that a lot of folks I know have asked. I think Matt and I have discussed this a couple of times at HINSA conferences. But Intrepid is basically the centerpiece of a sea, air, and space museum. So that's the logic behind her being there.
Gotcha.
As far as why her as adverse to another place, that's a very sore point with a lot of folks, which has recently re-entered politics recently, because Cape Canaveral gets one, and then the Smithsonian gets one, and then they wanted to spread them out around the country, so they were looking for a spot on the West Coast, and so the Los Angeles Space Museum, something like that, Technology Museum, ended up getting one, and then the last one, most people, myself included, seem to think Houston would have gotten one for Johnson Space Center, where the control centers are. And instead, they chose Intrepid, which puts 3 of them on the East Coast and 1 on the West Coast, and nothing in the center of the country. So there's always been debate about that. And here recently, for reasons unknown to me, the president has weighed in, and he's going to take one of the shuttles. I don't know where he's taking it from, but he's claiming he's going to take one of the shuttles and send it to Houston. I don't know. The vagaries of politics.
Indeed, which I'd rather not.
I'm not going any further than that.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, but Sandy did more than hit Intrepid. She hit a few other places as well.
I'm assuming there was no major issues for New Jersey. I'm sure Ryan would have mentioned that to you in your discussion.
I haven't heard anything about New Jersey. Nothing popped up in my searches, or Olympia or Bacuna. But I would expect they would have gotten a little bit of rise in the Delaware, being that Sandy was coming along, trucking up the East Coast. One of our entries is going to be on the Hackensack River, and it got a large storm surge.
Okay.
Let's see who pops up. Hopefully I didn't destroy that slide.
Here we go. Some tall ships.
Yeah, these guys are right down the street from Intrepid, right down the island. The South Street Seaport Museum was the home of the Peking, the Waverly, and the lightship Ambrose. Ambrose obviously is in the top left corner. That's Peking, the black and white hull, 4-master on the bottom left, and Waverly, 3-master over on the bottom right. And being at the South Street Seaport Museum, they were right up front when the storm surge rolls in. And if you go ahead and hit the next slide, you'll see some of the photographs right there. The pier is underwater. We're looking at the fence, but the fence is partially submerged.
As I said, the fence looks underwater too. Well, the bottom.
Yeah, the bottom of the fence is underwater. Let's see, what did they get? They suffered. I think they've got about 6 feet as well, just like Intrepid did. But they suffered $22 million in damages. The only
Wow.
things that didn't get hurt were the ships. They had the ships lined up in a the shipkeeper described it in a Pythagorean. For those of you that remember geometry, Pythagorean type formation to where two of them are supporting the third at all times, and then tied off to the piers, which is a really nice use of geometry in real life. But yeah, the winds and the storm surge did not affect the ships, but it just pushed all that water onto the pier, pushed it all into the museum, and just destroyed everything there. And I think you got another one showing the Ambrose at night coming up. Yeah, you can see all the light poles. You can't see what the light poles on the right are tied off to. You can barely see the edges. Thank you, Ozzy. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Ozzy.
And
you have a great Labor Day weekend as well.
Yes. So yeah, the boats did well, but all this storm surge really messed them up.
Because you can see what looks maybe the end of a pier or something right here.
Yeah.
And only these little I don't know, posts or whatever are sticking out. And look at these look like they might be power lines right here.
Mm-hmm.
And they're submerged as well.
And if you hit the next one, this one will show you, give you something to compare to. This is after everything's cleaned up and everything. And you notice the solid white line going across the center of the picture?
That was, I'm going to assume that was the peak of the storm surge.
That was the high water mark for the storm surge. So everything on those lower floors, they had pulled all their artifacts up and everything, but all just like, you know, houses in South Louisiana, when a storm surge comes through, they had to gut that first floor, get into the walls so you don't get black mold and all that, and just rebuild the first floor from scratch and fix everything back up. So 22 million.
Jeez.
Now, the sad thing about that is this was right after they were just getting through the 2008 recession. According to one of the articles, they were beginning to see some recovery from that. And unfortunately, this hits in 2012 and just puts them deeper in the hole. They were making their way out of the hole, and then they go back into the hole. And as a result, they had to pick and choose amongst their ships because they just didn't have the money to take care of all three of them anymore. And so the Waverly had a direct connection to New York, and they had just poured a bunch of money, got a grant running that was coming down for the Ambrose. So they gave up the Peking, and the Peking fortunately was saved and was rehomed to the German Port Museum in Hamburg. So she's in Hamburg now. She's doing well. So good. They didn't lose her, but I mean, that's an example of the byproducts. You know, the ships were fine, but one ship lost its home because it impacted the finances and the infrastructure of the museum itself. So damage directly from a storm doesn't have to happen.
This is off topic just for a bit, but I want to, you know, for the folks who have never experienced a hurricane, don't live in a hurricane prone area, we were talking about this is the high water mark. The storm surge was up to this white line. In Katrina, it was probably up to about right here and maybe even higher in some places.
Yeah, Jackson Barracks actually had water up on the second floor of its museum building.
Yeah.
right after they had finished a renovate, like a million, however many $1 million renovation.
Right.
I knew the curator. I went to high school with him, and he was in Afghanistan at the time. And when he came home, I said, "So have you gone to look at the museum?" He's like, "I don't have the heart. I rebuilt that place, and then it just got trashed." He said, I don't think I ever want to set foot in that building ever again."
Wow.
Yeah, just heartbreaking.
Indeed.
Anna, yes, Hamburg, Germany is where Peking is at now.
Let's see. Next one.
Yeah, we should have one more left for Sandy. Well,
Sandy had quite a few, didn't she?
Sandy had quite a few, and unfortunately, I think when I added in, sadly, when I added in Stewart, I lost one of Sandy's ships, so I'll go ahead and mention that now. USS Ling over in Hackensack, New Jersey. They took storm surge there, and it destroyed Ling's pier and gangway. And so the museum was already having a little bit of trouble, and that just exacerbated things because now they couldn't get to the submarine. And of course, we all know what's happened with that since. Ling has just steadily declined. Sank at her moorings. They raised her, and then you had vandals go on board, urban explorers go on board and vandalize and open seacocks. Just a mess. So that's another one to tally up. HMS Bounty has visited Kidd twice, in 2002 and again in 2008. And great ship, lovely cruise both times that we visited. I actually got to sail on her from New Orleans in 2002, 2003, back to St. Petersburg, Florida, where they would winter her. And just a fabulous replica. And she was at sea when Sandy started coming up, and they tried to skirt. They expected the storm to curve outward to the east, like most of them usually do that go up the East Coast. So they were skirting over toward the North Carolina coast to try to avoid the bulk of the storm. And instead, the storm kept going straight and eventually turned to the west when it hit New York. And they got caught right up in the middle of it, and it swamped her, and she went down. And you'll see that in the next slide.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Lost two of her crew members, the captain and a visiting crew member who actually is or was a descendant of Fletcher Christian, a lady by the name of Claudia Christian. And for those that aren't familiar with the Bounty, Fletcher Christian was the one that led the mutiny on the original Bounty against Captain Bligh, and ended up on Pitcairn Island, if I remember correctly. And that's where the crew lived. And eventually, I think only 3 were still alive by the time the island was rediscovered, because it was not on the map where it really was. And so it was a couple of decades, I think, before they got rediscovered. I was actually going through physical therapy, occupational therapy, with my hand, with my injury, when the storm took place. And when I heard about the Bounty, it was playing on the radio behind the desk while I was sitting there getting twisted and torqued back and forth with the arm. So I was like, can we take a break? I need to hear this story.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of the Bounty crew, former crew members, because they would rotate like a training ship, are still in contact via Facebook and everything. So we talk periodically.
Okay.
And let's see. Yeah, it was a very sad event. Let's see. I think we've got. Next thing. I think Matt's up to bat.
Oh,
Yep.
yes. Here we go. Hurricane Katrina. So Matt, you told us before you've been there about 10 years, so Katrina would predate you. But what can you tell us that you've learned about how the storm affected the ship and the museum since you've been there?
Excuse me. Well, the most obvious is that it did cause the ship to list. Enough water came into the bay that the ship, uh, was buoyant and came up out of what we call the bathtub that she sits in, which is just the natural bottom of the bay, that had filled in around the hull, because when she got there, they filled the voids with and the fuel tanks with water to get her to settle, and then the just natural progression of sediment coming down the rivers in the bay filled in around her, and so she kind of made her own little bathtub that she sat in. And when the water came in and all the she came up, and she ended up hitting the aft gangway, which we'll see a picture of that in a second. And when she settled back into that bathtub square, you can see that aft gangway there, where she had collided with it and took it out. And so she settled with I believe it was an 8 to 10 degree list, and then so there was the process of having to do that. But since we're looking at it, you can see that. Okay, well, we're back over here. So the process okay, so yeah, and you can see it obviously affected the aircraft pavilion in a devastating way, and a lot of the aircraft really took a beating in there. And the aircraft pavilion was fairly new at the time, and in fact, the whole park had just gone through a really big renovation, and they just spent millions of dollars. And then this hurricane came through and really just caused a mess of things. So, you have this new pavilion and a new paint job and everything on the ship. And Drum had not too long before that had been brought into her permanent dry berth. And then the storm came in and just really made a mess of things. Drum, luckily, essentially did not suffer any ill effects. Her permanent dry berth kept her secure. There was, I think, one leaky hatch. They said there was a little bit of rust on the deck when they came down into the drum. And the drum was fine, is what I was told. So, and what you can't see in these images is that a select number of crew and their families stayed on board. And, the crew that stayed on board was there to just try to take care of the ship in the event anything happened. And they drove their cars up onto the fantail of the ship. And
Wow.
you could only bring cars up on that aft gangway. So a bunch of folks had their cars stuck on the battleship until they could bring a crane in to crane them off.
Wow.
That's amazing. Now, with the drum, as if I remember correctly, the reason drum is permanently dry berth was because of a hurricane, not Katrina, but a different hurricane. Am I right? Do I have that right?
Well, the dry berth for Drum had a lot to do with her condition at the time. So she was in kind of dire straits, and so it was decided by some very smart individuals at the time that the best future for her was a permanent dry berth. And we'll have to talk about it again sometime. I've got some fantastic photographs of the process of dry berthing her. But since she's been dry berthed, that's, they've replaced a lot of wasted steel. We just actually had all the tanks were blasted and recoated recently. And so a lot of it was more about just long-term preservation for Drum.
Okay. So let's see. We do have some pictures here of the damage of the inside the pavilion. What can you tell us about these images here?
Okay, so essentially, when you come in the aircraft pavilion, which I believe that upper right photograph, you're looking at the entrance. When you walk in, everything had been shoved into the far right corner, all the aircraft. So when the water came in from the shore, it just pushed everything into the back corner. And you can see here our A-12. Well, everyone likes to call it SR-71 Blackbird because they look very similar, but the A-12 is the predecessor. But our A-12 has speared into our F-8 Crusader at the time, and that Crusader was so damaged it was decided that she would go back to the Navy, I believe, and we've actually had her replaced in 2007, another Crusader. We lost I think it's an H-19 Chickasaw that was destroyed, and we had a Corsair, a Hellcat, a Devastator that were all damaged, but they were not beyond repair. They were relocated from Battleship Memorial Park. They are all in other museums now and have been restored. I'm not sure off the top of my head where the Hellcat or the Dauntless is. The Corsair is in San Diego at their Air and Space Museum, and we are actually mentioned on the text panel that that's where she came from. She was damaged in Katrina and then moved and restored out there. And matter of fact, we are working on the last aircraft right now that was damaged in Katrina, and it's our YF-105B.
Wow.
And it's probably about 95% without paint. We're taking paint out of the equation. The repairs are about 95%. So it's taken 20 years, and mostly through the efforts of one man, Mike Thompson, to restore these aircraft. So it's taken 20 years to work through these aircraft.
That's crazy. How long did it take for you guys to right the ship back, on an even keel, get that that gangplank or walkway, whatever you want to call it, repaired? How long did that take to get all that done?
I don't want to lie to you. I'm not sure of that exact date or that time frame.
Okay.
It was a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. I do recall that.
Okay. So you being right there in Mobile Bay, was it the winds that caused that list, or was there storm surge going into the bathtub, as you called it, and lifted her?
It was the storm surge coming in that had lifted her, and the fact that she was buoyant. I always point that being an example of how good a condition the hull's in, that she was buoyant. And in fact, hull surveys done around this time, they said the paint beneath the mud looked almost brand new. So it just shows you that being even sitting in mud, that's an anaerobic environment. So there's no oxygen, you can't have oxidation. So
Right.
In a roundabout way, it showed how good the condition was of the hull.
Do you know about how long that cofferdam has been around the ship?
So the cofferdam, I believe construction began in 2003. And that was also a result of the condition of the hull for Alabama. She had suffered a couple of hull breaches, and unfortunately, that was along the where the fuel tanks are, and we had some fuel oil get out, and that was all. It ended up being contained and cleaned up, and everything was okay. But at that point, we knew that the hull was getting dangerously thin. And so the Battleship Commission and the director at the time and staff, they made this cofferdam happen, which is gives us the ability to pump the water out and to treat it as a dry dock in place. And they replaced quite a bit of steel, and we still monitor that pretty regularly. We just had a brand new cathodic protection system put in place. But that is I suppose a long answer to about 2003. We're looking at almost 20 years for the cofferdam.
Okay. Tim, anything you want to ask him?
It just hurts my heart looking at that right-hand picture, seeing all of those planes on top of each other. Is that a Huey right there on its side?
Kind of looks like. I don't know for sure.
I believe so. And you know what? I think we did lose a Huey. It was a bad situation, and you know, I wasn't there at the time. You know, I was just about 20 years old. I had nothing to do with the park. I was over in Mississippi, and but even retroactively looking at this, it really hurts, and you can tell talking to the staff members who were there, it was a tough thing for everyone.
Yeah, because you got stuff going on at home with their personal lives, their houses and everything, and then they're having to deal with this as well. Jackson Barracks Museum has a great aircraft collection, nowhere near as big as yours, but I remember talking to the guys down there, and they were having to disassemble all of the landing gear and just break it down to its bare components and clean it up and everything, because it's got saltwater residue in there, and just fix it back up and put it back together. And it was just, they're like, we're so tired of stripping and repairing and rebuilding landing gear. We're sick of it. So I know your guys just we're probably just in a deep, dark hole, depression-wise, having to deal with this. But y'all have come back.
It was a monumental,
in a wonderful way.
Oh yes, for sure. I mean, it's worth mentioning also. Battleship Memorial Park. You guys were USA Today did a list of the top 20 or the top 25 museum ships in the country, and I think you guys came in at number 6, if I remember correctly. So, you know,
yeah, I think that was number 6.
That's amazing,
and we're pretty proud of that. You know, my personal opinion is we're number 1. No offense, Tim, but
destroyers don't make those. Too. Destroyers don't make those lists. It's subs and big boys. We understand.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm shocked that you guys came in at 6 and not higher. You should be higher.
They should have been higher.
Yeah, they probably picked the Iowas.
I don't remember what was ahead of them. I just remember when I'm looking at the list, I'm like, okay, I've been to Battleship Memorial Park 7-8 times within the past 7-8 years, coincidentally, and you know, you guys are rocking on all cylinders. You know, and you guys, by the way, just I know this is off topic a bit, but you guys are my museum ship fix while Kidd's in dry dock. So you guys have been benefiting from Kidd being in dry dock.
And FYI, talking about how we know each other, that was me sowing with the Iowa comment. That was me sowing dissent between the Iowa class, the Iowas, and the Sodak and the North Carolina. The tin cans have to sow dissension amongst the big boys so that they fight each other instead of coming after us.
I dig it. Well, to Katrina for a minute, you know, in the media, we always hear, you know, New Orleans, New Orleans, New Orleans, and justifiably so. But the storm was so massive and so powerful, you know, it often gets overlooked what happened to Mississippi, and not just the Mississippi coast. And Mobile here, I mean, this photo is the perfect example. Look what happened to the Alabama here. I don't know how Mobile as the city did, but it just gives you an idea of how big the storm actually was.
Right. So the eye came in right around the border between Louisiana and Mississippi, and I mean that's got to be a good I don't know, 90 to 100 miles or better between, you know, the state line between Louisiana and Mississippi. and Mobile. So it was just a massive storm.
Yeah.
And she was had reached a 5 when she was in the Gulf, and then she had downgraded to a 3 by the time she fall. But the damage had been done. She had pushed so much water up already in front of her, and she was just such a big storm that it was just a wall of water. And I was living in Ocean Springs, Mississippi at the time, and we evacuated to Goshen, Mississippi. And it was the house was still here when we got back, but it had taken in some water, and there was some repairs that needed to be done. And I have friends with much worse stories than my own, so it was it was a little disheartening at times, but
yeah, and to the point about Mississippi, I'm sure you guys, if you haven't been there, you've at least heard of it. Ship Island off of the coast of Gulfport. You've got the fort, USS Massachusetts there. This is about an hour or so boat ride from Gulfport, because I've taken that boat ride, and listening to the tour guide that was taking us around Fort Massachusetts, when he talked about Katrina, he mentioned how the entire island, including the very highest points of the fort, it was just completely submerged. So to give you an idea of what the storm surge was like. We actually had one we mentioned Ida in the beginning. Ida was actually a more powerful storm than Katrina. Difference being Ida was not as large as Katrina. She hit a less populated area, and that's why you don't hear about it as much as you hear about Katrina. Tim.
Yes.
Coincidentally, we're not talking about Kidd, how Katrina affected Kidd. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Kidd did not really get any damage to the museum, the aircraft, the ship from Katrina, because we caught the west side of the storm. And for those listening that aren't familiar with tropical cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons. Well, I'm gonna backtrack. Not typhoons, because I'm not on the West Coast, so I don't know how typhoons operate differently from hurricanes. But for hurricanes, the west side of the storm is always the weaker side of the storm as it rotates. So the east side of the storm is what you really want to avoid, because that's what's going to bloody your nose. So we were lucky with regard to Katrina. We lost power. And the biggest impact that Katrina had to Kidd was the Baton Rouge River Center. Now the Raising Cane's River Center is directly across the street from us. And they turned that into a shelter for refugees from the storm. And I know folks don't like the term refugees, but they were escaping the storm. And so they bussed people there and put them in there. I think they had at the maximum about 8,000 people inside the river center, living barrack style. And your cat just distracted me. By the time I got down to the museum, because there was no power down there, somebody came down, checked it out, and made sure there was no damage. And then they called the staff and said, stay home until further notice. The ship's fine, museum's fine. I was not the ship superintendent at that point, so I wasn't the one that ended up going down and looking at it. But by the time I got down there, when you come down Government Street toward the museum, you top a hill and kind of go down onto the old riverbed. And that street was completely closed and completely filled up with tent showers, portalets, water stations, all sorts of tractor trailers for medical needs and everything. The entire street for like 3 blocks was just closed and filled with emergency response equipment and facilities for those 8,000 people there. And that stayed up for a month. So we were not able to open. We lost revenue. Our staff basically was just, for all intents and purposes, laid off because we couldn't do anything. So that was the biggest impact. And then after that, I would say, and Matt, you would be able to chime in as far as how this impacted Bama. The national media just was grabbing hold of every little rumor that was coming out of the area. New Orleans and Louisiana were suffering from cholera outbreaks, yellow fever, riots in the city, roaming gangs, killing and raping and pillaging and everything. And this is going out on national and international news. We had reunion groups that were coming in October and November to visit, and they were having people cancel because, like, a guy in Peru that served on one of Kidd's sister ships in Desron 48, they were supposed to be coming, and that group was open to even foreign service members, like the ships that got sold to foreign countries. Their crews were welcome into these reunion groups. And the guy that normally came from Peru for one of those ships made it a family vacation, brought everybody to the States for a vacation. And he got to hang out with guys that served on his ship. He called up, he said, "I can't come." And he's like, "Why?" He's like, I can't expose my kids to this cholera outbreak that's up there where the kid is. Can't do it. And we're like, whoa. There's no cholera outbreaks, dude. Chill. And he's like, I can't do it. I already had to cancel. So for 2 years, the I-10 corridor, Louisiana, basically for tourism, just became a drive-through state. Nobody stopped. You hit the Texas-Louisiana border, and you keep going till you hit Mississippi or maybe Alabama or Florida.
Yeah, I think that might be the one upside to the fact that Mississippi and Alabama were a little overlooked by the national media when it came to Hurricane Katrina, is that we didn't get that kind of coverage after the fact, those kind of rumors and everything. I don't recall really having, any issues with that.
That's good.
So
that's good. Yeah, we just had the Bowling Congress wrap up across the street from us last month, and all the first half of the year they were here and coming over and visiting. And they came in 2005, and that was the first time they came to Baton Rouge. We tripled our annual budget in those first 6 months. And so I was telling everybody that was coming through today, thank y'all for coming, because in 2005, you're the only reason the Kidd is still around. And they were looking at me funny. I said, because y'all came in 2005, we tripled our annual budget in income. And then Katrina came after y'all left, and tourism died for 2 years. And if we hadn't had that surplus, the museum wouldn't still be here. The ship would be gone. And they were really amazed at and kind of feeling good about the fact that they had made that big of a difference by taking the conference on the road somewhere. So, but if it wasn't for the bowlers, Kidd would have been done.
Yeah. Another thing about Katrina, well, not even just Katrina, but I'd say Baton Rouge, actually. You guys, Tim, you guys in Baton Rouge, you got to have a bit of an advantage over Matt and Battleship Memorial Park, where you guys really don't have to worry about storm surge. That's not so much an issue in Baton Rouge.
No,
it's more wind damage, because she's far enough upriver in Baton Rouge. You're not getting storm surge that far up the Mississippi.
Correct. And that time of year as well, she's usually sitting in her cradle. So, even if the storm surge comes, it's just going to float us. But that was one of the early questions that somebody hit me with on our YouTube channel. What are your plans for a storm surge from a hurricane? It's like, none. There's not going to be a surge. He's like, well, a Cat 5. And I'm like, Cat 5 is not going to do anything. It may be 100 miles to the Gulf from Baton Rouge, but it's 230, I believe, by the river because it snakes back and forth and back and forth.
Correct.
It'll never get to us.
Yeah. We're not quite done with hurricanes and USS Alabama. We got another one. Let's move on. Here we go. Hurricane Irma in 2017. And I got to say, but before we discuss this, just I am a photographer, and speaking as a photographer, this is an excellent shot right here. I just got to throw that in there. The composition, everything about it. But right here, there's water right here. There's always water right here. This is Mobile Bay. Matt, what can you tell us about Hurricane Irma? Because you were there in 2017. What are your memories of that?
So I'll say this: there's another picture that I know you have that makes it look like the whole bay was empty, but I don't know why that picture looks like that, or what kind of post processing they did. This one, there was still water; it was just very low. But it was a windy day, but it didn't it didn't affect us negatively. Usually what we have to worry about is the causeway that kind of parallels I-10 right there. That's how you get to the park. We worry about it flooding out. If it floods that out, even if it's just right over there on the left of the picture, if it floods that out, then the park's closed and there's nothing we can really do about that. But this is kind of the opposite. It pulled all the water out. So I remember that day, and it was just kind of like it was just a nice breezy day, and the temperature wasn't too terribly hot. So it was actually kind of a nice day at Battleship Memorial Park.
So we were talking about, the east side and the west side of the storm, or, the dirty side being that northeast quadrant. You guys are clearly on the west side of the storm for this one, because like you're saying, that the west side is pushing water out. The east side is the one where all the storm surge is coming up. So it looks like you guys made it through this one without any major issues.
Yeah, no problems with this one.
And if you look real good, you can see the drum right here. There she is in her permanent berth.
And Matt and I were talking about this on my way home from work today, because I was asking him more about this, because I found this picture and I'm like, holy cow, that's amazing. And for Bama, it wasn't a big deal because she's such a big ship. But think about something the size of Ingham, a little Coast Guard cutter, or with a narrow beam, or Kidd, or something, or Stewart, and them being afloat, and then all of a sudden this water goes away like that, and she sits on the bottom. That could have caused problems. You could have actually had a smaller ship tilt over and go over on her side. So that was the thing that really impressed me about this photograph, about the potential for a different type of ship if that were to happen to them.
Well, on Bama, do you guys keep water like in the ballast to keep her on or an even keel, or does the mud essentially do that for you guys?
So there's a couple of things that work for us in that sense. How the sediment filled in around the ship. Number one, is kind of, like I said, a bathtub around her. So she's secure that way. And then the way the ship was designed, a lot of the battleships are a flat bottom vessel to help make them a better gun platform. So even without, as long as the bottom was fairly flat under her, she would have settled just, flat. And then on top of that, we do keep the fuel tanks and the ballast tanks along the sides of the ship full with fresh water.
Right. Let's see. We got a question here for you, Matt. Does the ground behind the museum flood? Do you have to worry about the planes being moved around during a storm?
So Yeah, if it's a big enough storm, everything that you see, all that land, that green, just about all of that will be underwater if it's a big enough storm. Katrina, I saw I've seen video taken from Battleship from Katrina, and it looks like she's at sea. You can see the building, the pavilion, the aircraft pavilion next to her.
Right.
As far as the aircraft, that's always a concern. Anything, look, if you've ever been in a hurricane, especially a big hurricane, something with storm surge, everything is potentially a projectile, unless it's 10,000, ton ship or 45,000 ton ship. Everything's potentially a projectile, and even those can be, as we've seen in some of the other museum ships, can break loose and float away and do damage. So yeah, anything on the property could potentially move, and you will see. We lash them down, and but you don't want to secure them too hard, because the chances, the hydraulic pressure. It's like, do you want the aircraft to move, or do you want it to be solid and potentially be tore apart by the hydraulic pressure that's coming in? So, you know, you're there's not a great solution, to be honest.
Right.
One of the things we are working on is we're working on the idea of essentially planes on the grounds. We're talking about maybe essentially setting them on blocks that they'll be elevated. Integrate that into a display so they'll be elevated maybe a couple of feet. That gives them a little more chance in the event of a storm like that.
Okay.
Matt, I thought of a question that I had wanted to ask earlier, and it went away for a while. Was the big bomber out front on the lawn in 2005, or was that a later acquisition?
No, the B-52 came in, I think, in 1975. So she was there, and she was not moved. So, um, but she's a big aircraft, so she survived that hydraulic pressure I was just talking about, with that water coming in and moving back and forth, and she survived that.
Any of the armor get filled up? Like, did you have to get silt out of any of the tanks or anything?
I don't recall any stories or anything about silt being in them. They you know some of the insides of some of the tanks got water in them. Of course, you can't get away from that. But for the most part, they were fine.
Good.
I want to say some of them actually did move, but for the most part, everything was kind of where it was. And something we haven't talked about is we have an H-16 Albatross, HU-16 Albatross in the park, which is a seaplane, and she actually floated with the storm and settled away from where she was.
Wow.
But she was fine.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's nice when things, work as they were designed.
Yeah.
I
That's
want to
cool.
show you guys this picture real quick. This is Katrina. Looks like she's making landfall. Seems like because our coast would dip down right here, then come back up, and yeah, you'd have Mobile over here off to the right somewhere. Just to
Right. And
give you an idea
so,
of how big she was.
well, and it's also, that's a great illustration of, you can kind of see the direction the winds are moving, and so you can see it's pulling water out on that west side of the storm, and like we were talking about, and on that east side, it's pushing it up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and unfortunately for Battleship Memorial Park, they were on the west side of the storm at at this one, and this was a particularly bad one.
Oh yeah. It's one of the things that, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, obviously we all live on the Gulf Coast. Hurricane season is 6 months out the year, but generally speaking, I start paying good attention to the tropics about mid-August, because that window from like mid-August throughout September, it always seems, and especially around Labor Day, that's when it seems the worst of them hit all the time. So you guys follow in that same window, or what do you guys do?
Definitely.
I start looking right away. I mean, it's especially, because like you were saying, Tim, it's twofold. So if something happens, you got to deal with it at home, and then you got to deal with it at work too. And
Yeah.
so I live about 60 miles away from Alabama, from the Battleship Memorial Park. So logistics could be interesting depending on anything. So and I've had this discussion with the director. At June 1st, we were already talking. We're looking at anything, and we've already, even before the season starts, we're looking at our plans for the park, and at what stage does what need to be moved.
Yeah. We have a similar checklist of going through for preparations and then going through for reopening, just for basic safety. So, and pretty much, every time some of the younger crowd is like, can we stay on the ship? It's like, no, you can't stay on the ship. The ship's not going to have, you can be guaranteed the ship's not going to have power. It's going to be hot and miserable and dark, and you're going to fall and hurt yourself.
Yes.
So that
For sure.
that is one thing. We do have a generator on Alabama that will power the ship. So you will have power on board Alabama if you lose power from shore. And that's happened a couple of times since I've been there. Just hiccups. A couple months ago, they had a bird flew into a transformer, and we lost all power on the ship and had to run off the generator.
Wow.
So that's handy. And and in that situation where a bird just flies into a transformer, that was handy because that's safety. If someone's, especially on a vessel that big, if someone's up in the bow and then another person's on third deck aft and someone else is in the engine room, and then you lose power, there's like Tim was saying, there's absolutely no light on that ship. It's the darkest dark you could ever imagine. You've just, it's a cave. So from a safety perspective, it's good to have something like that if you have the space. And luckily Alabama has the space to do that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She's a big girl. I've toured her quite a few times. I can vouch for that. Guys, do you have anything else you want to add? I think we kind of wrapped up all the Tim's slides here.
This is by no means a definitive list.
Sure.
I ran out of time doing the research, but I forget which storm it was. It was within the past 2 or 3 years. It may have been Ida.
It was 2021.
I was hearing a weird noise. Sorry. But it may have been Ida. One of the storms came up right through Louisiana, went up, and you could draw a line on the map for all the museum ships going all the way up to Halifax, to Sackville. It crossed over the Cairo, however you want to pronounce it, at Vicksburg. It passed over Cod and Raquin, and Buffalo, and just kept going up Haida, and then curved out to sea over Sackville. So I'm sure some of them have stories from their experiences with storms that are doing that, even if they've downgraded to a tropical storm or tropical depression, for an area that doesn't get them. I'm sure they've had some issues as well, but I just didn't have time to dig deep. And I haven't heard anything about Hawaii or California or Washington State with regard to typhoons, but I'm sure they've got them too. So this is just what I was easily able to find on the internet in just, when did we see each other? Lunchtime, in about a 4-hour research session. So I'd love to hear more from some of the other ships.
Well, Tim, you bring up a good point. These storms don't go away once they get off the coast, as we just saw with Hurricane Harvey causing all that damage in Appalachia. Even landlocked ships, I think it's Batfish, there was some severe flooding and it moved Batfish. So even if you're kind of landlocked, if you're in a flood prone area potentially, and if you're on water by water, you could see some flooding. If you have a big enough rainmaker, a hurricane could give you trouble up in Ohio or anywhere, someplace you wouldn't think you'd have trouble. So if you have a ship out there, I guess it's always a concern.
Yeah, and the inaugural used to be in St. Louis, and they just had a high amount of rainfall for a protracted period of time, and the Mississippi rose up, and she broke her moorings and drifted downstream and slammed into a bridge and sank. And she's still laying on the western bank, just rusting away. With a prophylactic station somewhere inside, covered by about 4, 5, 6 feet of silt. And I've been told, don't go in there because you'll never dig it out. And I'm like, I want it, but they keep telling me not to do it. So.
Yeah, I want to get a quick question in from the chat here. I know the answer for Kidd. How many years has Alabama and Kidd been in their locations? Well, Kidd's been a museum ship since '82. Was it the late '60s when Alabama arrived at Battleship Memorial Park, Matt?
So the Alabama arrived in Mobile in 1964. And she's been there ever since.
Okay.
We were Texas was the first, 1948. Then North Carolina, I don't know the exact years, maybe 60, 61, 62. And then we were the third museum ship in 1960. We opened in January 9th, 1965. So we just actually had our 60 years this past January.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
We are forgetting one thing.
What's that?
Kidd is a special ship in one regard to this topic. She rode out hurricanes in 2 different cities.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought about that. She rode out Francine
in Homa last year.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
I'm not saying the H word too much because I don't want to. This is a new season, so.
Okay, but no, that was a Category 1 storm. Thankfully, there was, it wasn't a very strong storm. I don't think it was a very large storm either. So damage, not only to the whole area, it was minimal. Thank goodness. And I think the only damage you guys suffered on Kidd was there was a tarp that covers the aft stern starboard. That's not original to the ship, and that was torn apart. Correct.
And it was half dry rotted already. So, yeah. And honestly, that's the biggest worry for Kidd and Baton Rouge is, the canvas is going to get torn up. We watch for that. That particular awning, if we watch it, if it's got some heavy enough winds, then the day before we just take out the knives and we cut the rope and roll it up and put it inside. Anything that's blowable, we lash it down. But we've actually had more damage from hurricanes to the building than we have to the ship. The worst damage I had to the ship was in Gustav. And again, 90% of it was the canvas. The only physical non-canvas item was Captain Kidd almost took flight. He had one elbow still screwed to the stack, and he was hanging by it. And we got him off and re-secured him. And that's really been the only thing. We've been very fortunate.
Yes.
Well, you said Kidd had went through 2 hurricanes in different locations. How far back can we go? Because Alabama was in Typhoon Cobra and Typhoon Viper. Are we allowed to count that?
This is as museum ships.
All right.
Well, it brings up an interesting question, though. Tim, to as best of your knowledge, was Kidd ever involved in any hurricanes, typhoons when she was in service?
Oh yeah, she went through Hurricane Marge in what's it called? Korea. She loaded up an admiral on one coast and was taking him around the tip of the peninsula to another. And of course, this is before satellite. And she ran headlong into Marge, and something happened, and she was running on one screw, and the captain was having to maneuver with one screw through these waves. They said the chief engineer left an oral history. He was in the midships passage, and there's a clinometer there. And he said, I knew that the point of no return was, I want to say 56 degrees. And that's if everything is ballasted properly and all the equipment is stowed away properly in all of its storage bins. Ammo, same thing. And he said, I knew that this came on us so suddenly that it wasn't ballasted properly and it wasn't stored away. And he said, we're sitting there locked in the midships passage because we can't get out on the weather deck for fear of being swept overboard. And he said, I watched that bubble go all the way over, and it would stop right at 56, and it would just hang there. And he said it seemed like hours. And then the bubble starts going and accelerate, and slow. And it's at 56 here, and just back and forth for hours. He said there was more praying and more religious conversions in that midships passage than you could ever imagine. And they heard noise up above them. That's where the quad 40s are. And just a heck of a racket. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. Are the guns tearing off or what? And so they drew straws, and some poor schmuck, young kid, the rope spindle is right outside. And so they grabbed the spool, got the bitter end, tied him off real good, and then sent him crawling up the gun tub to see what's going on, and pulling the rope from the spindle and feeding it back out through the hatch, just keeping the hatch cracked open. And said he was gone for a good while, but the rope keeps moving, and they're like, okay, well, he's obviously doing good. And finally, they felt a tug on the rope, and so they start retracting the rope, and they reach the end where they can't go anymore, and they open the door a little bit more, and he comes stumbling in. Said the only clothing on him was the belt that was around his waist. It had ripped his pants, his shoes, his shirt, everything off. He was buck naked, just the rope tied to the belt and tied around his waist. And he was hypothermic. And sick bay is right there. So they started warming him up, and they're like, so what was the racket? And he's like, all the 40 millimeter ready ammo is bouncing around. He said, I had to throw it off. It was going to hit something and go off. So he jettisoned all the ammo out of the tubs while being pelted with all these waves and everything. So, yeah.
Matt, same question. In service, any hurricanes, typhoons you're aware of for Bama?
Oh yeah. Like I said, December 1944, Typhoon Cobra, and then Typhoon Viper in June 1985. Yeah, she went through those. And she rolled up to about 30 degrees, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for a battleship.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah. And I'm not familiar with Viper. What is, when was Viper again?
Viper's June. She's also, I think normally she's referred to as Typhoon Connie, but I think Viper sounds cooler. But they also called it Typhoon Viper. That was June 1945.
45. Okay.
That was the one where Pittsburgh lost her bow.
That's not the one going up by Okinawa, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay.
Well, gentlemen, we're approaching 2 hours here. You guys think we got it, or anything else you guys want to add to this?
Thank you, Anna. I like the shirt as well.
Yeah, I'm wearing a pretty cool shirt too, by the way. I just want to point this out.
Hey, look at that. That's nice.
Yeah.
Hey, I like that one.
Yeah.
I need to get it.
Do they still make that one? I may have to pick it up next time I'm over.
For real.
You're gonna make me walk through the gift shop tomorrow.
Tim, where can folks go to learn more about USS Kidd Veterans Museum?
Our website is usskid.com. We have a presence on Facebook. Just look for USS Kidd Veterans Museum. We're on Instagram. We are on YouTube. We are on TikTok. I don't understand TikTok, but we're on it. We have a Patreon now. In fact, our Patreon members tonight are getting a sneak peek at part 2 of our video talking about the new contract, what we're doing, what we've added on. We were successful in our fundraising, and we added on some stuff that had to be taken off when we discovered there was a little bit more going on with the hull than what we knew. So all that stuff's back on the table and being worked on as we speak. So we dropped part 1 earlier, I think on August 7th. Part 2 is coming out tomorrow, but the Patreon members get to see it earlier than everybody else. So they're watching that right now, hopefully, and enjoying it. If not, then I'm going to get a bunch of emails saying you suck. But so far,
any upcoming content on the YouTube channel?
Tomorrow night, part 2 will drop at 7 p.m. So tune in and put the repeat on and let it just roll on. What else are we on? We're on X as well. So I think that covers all of our channels. And Mr. Alcee will be leaving us probably middle of next month. So we'll have a little bit of a lull, but I've just bought a new laptop last night. So I'm getting that tooled up so I can start editing a little bit until we get a replacement for Mr. Alcee.
Excellent. Good deal. Matt, where can folks go to learn more about Battleship Memorial Park and USS Alabama?
You can go to USSAlabama.com. That's our website. We also have a presence on YouTube, on Facebook, and Instagram.
And yeah, you guys are very active on your Facebook page. I see there's at least a couple of posts every day on Alabama's Facebook page.
Yes, sir. They do a great job with that.
They really do. Are we ready to go, guys, or are we finished?
If I can take just another second, we visited Matt back in May, beginning in May, and we've got a couple of videos that are sitting in the pipe. They've been stuck in the pipe because of our social media, our editing woes, and also the 2 videos that, talking about what's being added on in the dry docking, pushed in front of them because that was timely. But Matt and I will have a couple of videos coming out, one on his channel, one on our channel, for cross-pollination purposes. So I'm hoping that'll come out within the next month, hopefully, knock on wood. So you'll get to see some Bama Kidd interaction a little bit. And if you haven't already seen it, one of the 3 videos, because those 2 left, one already came out on the Kids channel, High Seas History. Mr. McCluney right here took the plunge and got hit by numerous waves as he recounted Bama's participation in the I forget what the campaign's called, but it was up in Norwegian waters during World War II.
It was Operation Governor.
Operation Governor. So he took it like a champ. I don't know that he'll ever let us throw water at him again. I was standing as far away from him as I could get because he's a big guy and he can hurt me, but he's a good friend and he didn't hurt me. So.
Well, honestly, I'm looking at when I was watching that video, I'm like, did he clothesline Tim after this video was over?
He probably thought about it
a few times.
Yeah. I got to commend Alcy for that editing because he had some real good zingers to put in there, reconsidering career choices and stuff like that. Yes, Anna, we did waterboard Matt, and he volunteered for it.
Well, I am certainly hoping, guys, go if you are not subscribed to the USS Alabama's YouTube channel, definitely go over there. Subscribe to their channel, give them some likes, drop them some comments, let them know that you're there and you would like to see more content from USS Alabama's YouTube channel. I know for sure I do. I'm excited to see what you guys are got coming down the pike here, what Tim was just talking about. All right. Well, gentlemen, I think we're spent. You guys ready to head out?
Ready if you guys are.
Excellent. Tim, thank you so much for putting that slideshow together. I appreciate that. And Matt, thanks for joining us. This is the first time we get to converse, not by a text or anything. And I hope you can come back in the future, because I would definitely love to dedicate one of these just to what we've been talking about. A stream where we're discussing the service history of both your vessels, how they became museum ships, because I think that's a fascinating story, and anything else you'd like to share about the museum itself.
Sure, absolutely. And just to tease that, Kidd was Alabama's escort from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
Tim, what's your quote? You needed us.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially when LSU and Bama play. I on Facebook I pit Kidd and Alabama against each other and bring Bama down a little bit.
So I'm guessing Matt is not War Eagle. He's Roll Tide.
I don't know. I actually don't know who Matt cheers for.
Maybe I shouldn't reveal that.
I would guess probably Ole Miss or Mississippi State, huh?
So it's time to go, right, guys?
Smart man.
Well, we can both be united in our opposition of Georgia. How's that?
Sure.
Oh, well, there you go.
And Texas A&M.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks who came out and watched this live stream, and we appreciate you guys as always. Again, go check out USS Kidd on YouTube, on Facebook, USS Alabama on YouTube, on Facebook. Check out their websites. Both have online merch stores, so be sure to stop by and take a look at that as well while you're browsing their websites. So until then, thanks for watching, everyone, and everyone have a great weekend and a great Labor Day weekend at that. We appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.